As I'm going along, if anyone has a question, you can interject, stop me, and I'll try and answer. Okay?
Okay.
So with that, I want to say hi to everyone again. I know I was judging just a few weeks ago. I thought this time it would be cool to talk about how I got started in photography and my career in New York just before I show some photos. It was really a lucky accident for me because it was my first semester at American University in Washington, D.C. I was a psych major. And just by chance, I signed up for a photography elective, which was mainly shooting black and white and developing it in the darkroom, learning darkroom techniques. And I had never really been into photography before. So very quickly into the semester, I realized that this is what I was really destined to do. So I decided not to go to grad school, and I would, just do photography. I was literally obsessed, and it wasn't easy because I had to do everything on my own. So I went back to New York City after graduation and tried to get a job assisting photographers. And really, no one was hiring women assistants in those days. This goes back quite a ways. And I couldn't get a job. But I did get a job as a production assistant for a film production company that produced TV commercials. And I started shooting black and white stills on the set, and developing them and giving them as gifts to people that worked on the productions. So that's how I got my start. My whole career, I used Nikons, but recently I switched to Sony cameras. So one of my favorite things to do when I first started was to photograph rock concerts. Mick Jagger at Madison Square Garden, McCartney and Wings, also at the Garden, as well as The Who, Patti Smith, Lou Reed, Rod Stewart, Fleetwood Mac, and many others. If you're into this kind of work, I have them all posted on my website under Classic Rock. Back then, for those concerts, I used a Nikon F with a 200mm lens, shooting without autofocus, and Tri-X film, which I pushed to probably 800 to 1200 ASA, which they called it then. It was an intense time for me, and I was totally obsessed with the magical qualities of the darkroom. I'd spend hours developing and printing my pictures. You've noticed I use the word obsessed a lot. Photography was never a job for me. It was a passion and something that kept me motivated and energized all these years. So I worked as a freelance photographer in New York and learned my craft by trial and error. I put a book together, tested with Ford and Wilhelmina models, and tried to get work. My portfolio was geared mainly toward fashion. My first big break was a campaign for Jacques Cohn espadrilles. And every ad featured a nude back. And they ended up on the back covers of New York Times. They were in Vogue. They were in all different magazines. I got very lucky. That was my first campaign. I had a studio on Union Square and then bought a loft on the corner of Broadway and Houston, where my family and I lived until 2012 when I sold it. You might remember this ad. It appeared as a back cover on the New York Times magazine and Gourmet magazine. It won many awards that year, including a Clio, the highest award in advertising. I searched everywhere to find the perfect fortune teller. And finally, I saw her at a flea market on 6th Avenue in her booth. And I asked her to do it. She definitely said no. But when I offered her $50, she agreed. So this picture was shot at the restaurant Metropolis on Union Square. And the funny part about the whole thing is that it ran for about 2 years. I love the copy line, "I see a man and a mule in your future." But the Colombians were offended by this line because a mule is a drug runner, and they pulled the ad after a couple of years. So this was part of a campaign I did for No Nonsense Pantyhose. It was called Whose Legs Are These? And it was a contest where the public had to guess which celebrities the legs belonged to. I photographed Chris Everett, Rita Moreno, Lisa Gibbons, Susan Lucci, and another country and Western music star. I traveled all over to find these women. And Rita Moreno, I did in my studio, and she was really great, was kicking so high. I wish I still had that photograph, but she was really generous. These were shot in my studio also with an art director from the George Lois Agency. He was really a legend back in those days. And this is just a glimpse of what photography looked like in advertising in the 80s. My career was very long and varied, and I did all kinds of commercial photography, even still life occasionally. I like the challenge of working with a team. Most of it was shooting film. I did a lot of shoots on my own for stock and just for my portfolio. I worked with Getty and Corbis back in those days. This model was actually a friend of my daughter's at the UN school. And I shot it just for fun, and then I put it into stock and it became an ad. And now this girl is writing her first film and directing it for HBO. This is just to show you that, you know, we can definitely have a lot of fun. Back in the day, you know, this was a really cool set of ads with the same art director from Doyle Dane Bernbach. And of course, it was the makeup artist and the stylist that did such an amazing job. So after I sold my loft and I moved to Miami, it was a huge change, obviously. And I just wanted to change my life completely. I have to say, I never regretted it. And it opened up a whole new chapter in my life. So this was my second act, obviously. After I moved to Miami, I started traveling and photographing. As Steve McCurry said, my camera is my passport. I found I was so inspired by the people with my camera that I enjoyed the most to go where I'd never been before. That really turns me on, just to walk around seeing places for the first time. I started showing my work in local art fairs and found I loved discussing my pictures with the people who came into my booth. And if they bought something, I was just overjoyed. It was incredible and amazing. And the thought of them hanging my work in their house after all those years in advertising, you know, was, you know, just great. So even now, I'm still so motivated, and that's the thing I love so much about photography. This was my last trip before the pandemic. I returned to Northern India on February 10th, 2020. And like all of us, it's been a long 16 months, and more than a few trips were canceled. But now things are starting up again, and I went to Mexico in April, actually, to present at this place called Rancho La Puerta. Look it up. It's just an amazing spa and mountain climbing area. So this was the Golden Temple in Amritsar, India. I fell in love with this place for its beauty and philosophy. Everybody, irrespective of caste, creed, or race, can seek spiritual solace and religious fulfillment there. I just want, you know, I'm sure you all know about the rule of thirds and all that. And yes, this is a perfect example because she's looking into the direction from into the negative space, and also the horizon line is 2/3 up as well. So I think both of these things and the color make this composition really, really interesting. I'm not going to really touch on so much about that. Again, this Golden Temple represents the distinct identity and heritage of the Sikhs, their generosity and kindness. Over 60,000 meals a day are provided for all who want it. The devotees sit together in rows on the floor, enjoying their meals. Enormous kitchens prepare the food for the masses, with volunteers doing all the work and serving. No one who comes to the temple goes hungry. Bathing becomes a holy experience all over India. The pool surrounding the Golden Temple is known as the Amrit Sarovar, which is considered sacred by the religious pilgrims. Before offering prayers, they bathe in the holy water of the Sarovar. The Sikhs believe that spiritual possessions can be gained by taking a dip in the water of the sacred pool. At the Golden Temple, I was there for 3 days. I arrived either at 6:30 a.m. or 5 p.m. This was photographed during late afternoon. The golden hour is only 40 minutes, and in the morning, it goes really, really fast before the light gets very harsh. Just to give you an idea what I did, for almost all of these shots, basically I stayed in one place and waited for what would happen or who would come by next. And one interesting person after another showed up. And that is so typical of India. And here are these men getting ready to bathe before they pray. So portraits and shooting people are what I love to do most. The key to photography is in your obsessions, whether they are trees, water, or sunsets. Think about what you want to see. What is your point of view? This was at the Turkana Festival in northern India. What am I saying? In northern Kenya. Many tribes in the region gathered there for 3 days to celebrate their tribe and tribal unity. These are two of the tribes, the Samburu and the Turkana. We were lucky to get them to be with us that night for this sunset shot. I am continually drawn to faces, especially when I'm traveling. I love connecting with people on an intimate level. This young woman was in her tent at the Turkana Festival in northern Kenya near Lake Turkana. She didn't speak English, and I just gestured for her to come close to the tent opening and if it was okay to photograph her. She agreed, and I was able to get the light from outside on her face and let the tent go dark behind her. It almost looks like modeled backgrounds that I used to use for fashion. I love the vibrance of her scarf and the intensity of her gaze. I'm actually going to use this picture as a cover for a book that I'm trying to do about African tribes. When you're making a portrait, it's essential to put the focus exactly on the eye of the person you are photographing. And again, you know, she's looking into the empty space with her head, but her eyes are going the other way, but it still seems to work. This is another shot from that Turkana festival. And I like this because of the selective focus and the fierceness of the woman in the foreground. I will touch on infrared a little bit later. I do shoot a lot of infrared, and I always carry 2 cameras or 3 cameras with me. One is an infrared camera, and a lot of times I'll shoot every scene with both cameras. The Taj Mahal in Agra, India. Another quote I love comes from the famous photographer Brassai. Chance is always there. We all use it. A good photographer meets chance all the time. This photo was completely chance. I was at the Taj very early, waiting online to get in around 5:30 a.m. At 6:30, they let us in, and a guide sort of grabs you and takes you all over. Look, madam, no people, look, madam. He takes you to the arches, the reflecting pool, everywhere. And it's all great, but very, very typical, and everybody gets the same pictures. So suddenly I saw these 2 women, and they were dressed exactly alike. Still, there were very few people there, and I ran over to them, leaving the guide. And we did about, 10 shots where I was able to get this picture. And it made a very, very unique composition of the Taj. I think that they were probably sisters. This was also very, very early in the morning at the Pushkar Camel Fair. And it's one of India's largest camel, horse, and cattle fairs, located in the eastern part of Rajasthan. It takes place over 3 days in October to November. As soon as I arrived, again, like very early in the morning, I saw this woman, a gypsy, next to this red background. And I'm like, I can't believe it, this is so lucky. So I asked her if she would do a shoot with me, and we did a series of photos, got this picture, which I really love. Also at the Pushkar Camel Fair, Sadhu, or holy man, on the left and a camel trader on the right. 80% of my photographs are portraits, and most people are very kind and willing to be photographed. The Sadhu on the left definitely gave me a gift of pulling on his beard. Here I was just cruising around the camel fair with 70 to 300 millimeter lens. And this wonderful scene presented itself to me. I saw him. He was very scary looking, actually. Was a little bit nervous about taking his picture. But as soon as I raised my camera, I was about 20 feet from him. He just started posing for me and blowing smoke and looking amazing. And it didn't hurt that the camel was great also. Zooming in on one part of a scene is always a great idea. Shooting with a long lens and putting the camera on aperture priority is a great recipe for getting a really interesting picture. Of course, it helps to have a great subject. And this one I really love because of the dust and the sort of painterly quality of it. Didn't hurt the men were wearing white. It was extremely, extremely dusty those 3 days. You could barely breathe. Everyone was coughing all the time. But it was really worth it to get the amount of photos that we really did get. Now I'm going to show you some pictures of a tribe that is very, very exotic and in a very remote place in Namibia, which is a country just above South Africa. I traveled there in June of 2019. This woman is from a tribe called the Himba. They are a semi-nomadic people who live in one of the most extreme environments on the earth, the deserts that border Namibia with Angola. As water is scarce, they use a mixture of pastes on both their bodies and hair for cleanliness. These pastes blend the resin of the Omazumba shrub with animal fat and ground red pigmented stone. You can see them in their huts grounding the stone all the time. This paste, called Ochizi paste, gives the woman's skin and hair a distinctive glow, which symbolizes both blood, the essence of life, and Earth's rich color. Moreover, the red layer seems to help against the scorching sun, which keeping the skin clean and moist, and to some extent blocks hair growth on the body. In the Himba community, hairstyles play a significant role. They show marital status, wealth, rank. Hair braiding is a communal activity. Close relatives spend hours creating elaborate hairstyles. The braids they create are often lengthened by including bits of woven hair, bits of goat hair, woven hay, and artificial hair extensions. Its hair is also a symbol of fertility, where thick braids and lustrous hair indicate a woman's ability to bear children. Women who have been married for about a year or have a child wear an ornate headpiece called the Arimbe, sculpted from sheep or goat skin, with many streams of braided hair, colored and shaped with ogizi paste. They'll also wear a necklace that incorporates a cone shell, known locally as a ohumba, which is also considered a symbol of fertility. I bought one of these and I have it hanging in my house. Another quote I love comes from Edward Steichen. A portrait is not made in the camera, but on either side of it. For this portrait, we used a black backdrop. We actually brought one with us to Namibia and set up lights to create an outdoor studio. I took many, many photos of her, but I really think this one stood out. One of the most remarkable Himba traits is that women were not allowed to use water for washing. This applies to themselves and also their clothes, and dates back to the great droughts where water was scarce and only men were allowed to access the water for washing purposes. Apart from applying red ochre on their skin, Himba women do take a daily smoke bath to maintain personal hygiene. I spent a lot of time with them, I have to say, in their huts in close quarters, and they didn't smell. Pretty amazing. This is the last Himba picture I'm going to show you. Made sure to get to this village very, very early to catch their cooking rituals. They stick to porridge early morning and evening. They heat some water, boil it, put some flour in, add some oil, and the food is ready. The flour is mostly from maize or millet. On rare occasions, such as weddings, they'll eat meat. I just wanted to include a few animal shots because I have been talking about the Himba tribe in Namibia. But in addition to visiting them, we also went to the Etosha National Park and spent some time on safari there. This was a great day at a watering hole in the midst of a drought. So we knew this location would attract a lot of wildlife. And at one point, I think about 80 elephants came down to this watering hole. It was really an intense and interesting scene. I have a lot of photos from this on my website. This was just before the elephants came, the zebra drinking. And I love this shot too, because, well, giraffes are such great subjects. This also was at the Etosha National Park, but it was in a different spot where we had cabins that were in walking distance. And I would really recommend this from a watering hole. So basically, you know, you'd be in your room and you look out the window, oh my God, there's a bunch of animals down there. And then you'd run out with your camera and, you know, get some amazing pictures. And we actually saw this rhino come out at night. And then while I was in Namibia, I went up in a helicopter over the Skeleton Coast. And they call it that because of heavy winds, so many ships were driven to the rocks and run aground. So it's one of the largest ship graveyards in the world. Here's another photo from the helicopter. And I was lucky that I brought a 70 to 200 millimeter lens because my friend who was in the plane with me only had a 400 and it was way too long. She had no options. And literally, I think I shot mostly everything out the window at about 85, using an 85. If you can see light, you have the key to photography. And these are two Himba women walking in the dunes at sunset. And here's another really lucky accident that I was photographing this woman from the front. She started to walk away from me and I clicked off a few shots. Amazing, at that instant, the baby looked back at me. And if you really notice, he's not holding on to anything and not wearing any strapping. One second, I just. Oh, I see, okay. The San are referred to as Bushmen. We actually saw them hunting with a bow and arrow. And what I wanted to say about this woman was that both of these images are of San women. The woman on the right was shot with our black backdrop again. And the San people are supposedly having the oldest gene pattern of any existing people on Earth. And it's thought that all nationalities are descended from them. The San village is referred to as a living museum. And historically, they were hunter-gatherers, and they moved through the year in accordance with the availability of water, game, and edible plants. So this is a San Bushman, and we actually saw him hunting with his bow and arrow. Again, in the San village, a mother and child I'm trying to show the emotion here, and I again pulled them to the front of the hut. The background goes dark. I was supposed to shoot in the Maasai village near Samburu National Park in Kenya, but it was raining. And then the Maasai invited me in to their huts. And I spent like a few hours just photographing them inside. I used a flash on the camera and bounced it off the ceiling, something I rarely do, but in this case it worked. The piercing and stretching of earlobes is a common practice. They use twigs and bundles of twigs to pierce and stretch their earlobes. Sadly, they also practice female genital mutilation, even though it's illegal in Kenya and Tanzania. This is a Maasai elder that I converted from color to black and white. The Maasai tradition of jumping is a way for a young man who has just become a warrior to show his strength and attract a bride. I really loved being in the Maasai village. It was an incredible experience. This is also a Maasai woman. And here I'm shooting her in front of the huts. I try to see the light and imagine how the image will look if it's printed. The most important part of photography is the light, as you all know. The backlight and of course her beauty and gesture make this photo. You know, if I had just shot her from the other side, it would never have been this interesting. And in the Masai Mara, the wildebeest running down a cliff to get to some water. And I was there to photograph the Great Migration, but there wasn't much migration, I have to say, because it was so dry that they didn't run searching for water. But here they are at the bottom with the zebras, and they're friends. The wildebeest and the zebras hang out with the giraffes. Obviously, when the lions come, they all run away, or the cheetahs. Our tents were on the waterway, and you could hear the hippos groaning all night. One afternoon outside my porch, which was elevated, so not dangerous, the hippos were going crazy. They were making so much noise, and I was so close to all of them. I was able to get a lot of these kind of fighting shots. Were really, I mean, they really weren't fighting, they were playing. This guy I loved, he's my favorite. We were out in the Jeep, and the lions, they come just by you. They're so close in the Mara. And he was watching a lion couple together, hoping that he could somehow get in on it. But he never did. But I love, he's so soulful, and he's got so many scars on his face. It's kind of really great. And then here's the couple he was watching mating. Later that day before sunset at the Mara, mother and baby were running home. They give you sandbags. I don't know how many of you have been on safari, but you get sandbags in the Jeep and you rest your camera on the sandbags and you move from side to side and you go up top, and you should bring a tripod anyway, but most of the time it's much more convenient to use a sandbag. In advertising, I worked with so many art directors over the years, but as a travel photographer, you are your own art director and your own editor. I really try to edit what I'm going to shoot and pass over what I think won't work. This was photographed in Jaipur, Rajasthan, on the street. The woman was offering us water, and of course we couldn't drink it, but the way she was in that little cubby hole was amazing. Very, very interesting, and I'm glad we were able to catch it. And this fellow was in Varanasi. They have very, very narrow streets, and you're walking and looking and, you know, between the cows and the cow dung. And, you know, saw this guy in the corner. It was great. Here I'm on a boat cruising up the Ganges in Varanasi. The Ganges River is one of the most revered waterways in the world, and also one of the most polluted. It provides water for 500 million people, more than any other in the world, stretching from the foothills of the Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal. It's the most sacred waterway in the Hindu tradition. It is understood as the personification of the goddess Ganges. Hindu belief holds that bathing in the water or the river on certain occasions causes the forgiveness of transgressions and helps attain salvation. Here I was in Koliat at a northern town in Rajasthan. There's an annual fair held at the end of October, the beginning of November. And during the full moon, thousands of pilgrims gather to take a dip in the Kapil Sarovar lake. They believe the lake has the power to wash away their sins. People were just lined up to come into this water. And it is amazing how they all go in their saris. And the water had, you know, a lot of pollution, a lot of things floating in it. Also in Koliat, the Indian people love to be photographed. During this festival, I found myself surrounded by groups and families of people begging me to take their picture. I mean, literally, I had to like force my way out. I love this photo, maybe because of the memory. I was walking inside Jaisalmer Fort in Rajasthan, and all the homes and the rooms, each was a one-room home, and they were all the doors were open. And I looked inside and saw this beautiful space and asked her if I could come in. And she wanted to prepare me chai tea, which they serve all over India. I was worried about drinking it, but I agreed. And we had the tea together, and she let me photograph everything in the room, but she would never remove the head covering. I was unable to photograph her face, sadly. And Indians shave their children's heads at the age of 4. It teaches humbleness and devotion. They believe that offering their hair to God is a symbolic gesture of surrendering their ego and a way of giving thanks for your blessings. Children with shaved heads are viewed as innocent and holy and are treated with respect. This photo was taken at the historic Hindu Meenakshi temple in the city of Madurai in southern India. The temple is dedicated to the worship of Parvati and Shiva. This is one of my favorite models from the Omo Valley. I may have shown this picture last time. I did many photographs of her in infrared as well as color. The Omo tribes live in the Omo on the Omo River in Ethiopia. The Rift Valley is a volcanic region which provides a large array of pigments for them to paint with on their faces: red ochre, white lanolin, copper, green, yellow, light ash gray. The tribes are geniuses at body painting. They draw with open hands, the tip of a nail, sometimes with a piece of wood, a reed, or a crushed stem. Here she is, same woman on the right with her friend walking away. Two more tribes from the Omo, the Hamar and the Desinesh tribes. Everyone wonders if these two girls are the mothers of the babies. I wish I had asked them that question, but I'm hoping they were just their sisters. The children are also wonderful to photograph. Here, I was just photographing the Samburu jewelry. I like this picture because of the way her beads are the focal point of the image. When you're shooting color, it can be one strong accent that makes the shot. The woman on the left is with the Turkana tribe, and I photographed her in her tent at the festival. I love it for her vibrance of clothing and the really soulful expression on her face. And the woman on the right is a Maasai elder. Both of these were featured in a 6-month exhibit I had at the American Airlines terminal. This iconic woman, and yes, she is a woman, always attracts a lot of attention at the arts fair. I've sold it many times, and she is from the Kara tribe in the Omo Valley. Sometimes when I'm shooting, I think of it as a series of sketches. You are trying and trying all different things, and you're shooting and shooting and shooting, and then finally you say, yeah, that's the one. Another quote I really love is, great photography is about depth of feeling. You have to just keep searching for those special moments that will elevate your photographs. Like this guy who's got it all going on. Moving to Mexico, I visited Oaxaca for the Day of the Dead, observed from October 31st to November 2nd. The multi-day holiday involves family and friends gathering to pray for their departed loved ones. It's commonly portrayed as a day of celebration rather than mourning. The most common design is painting the face to resemble a skull, which has a uniquely positive meaning in the Dia de los Muertos, very different from the skeletons or ghosts of Halloween. Skulls are a positive symbol, not only of death, but of rebirth. The children are the best because they're so creative. Streets are filled with people and parades. Here I'm running backwards in front of them with a long exposure and my flash on. But the most amazing part is what happens in the cemeteries. People coming with their whole families to celebrate life and to remember their loved ones. They eat, play music, and dance. The way they decorate the graves is so beautiful. They actually have contests in some cemeteries for the best grave decorations. And in the end, I don't think there's one marigold left in the city. I love this one for the attention to detail and the expression of solemnness and respect on the faces of the people. Most of the time in these graveyards, I'm using a tripod. It's an amazing, unique, and poignant tradition. There are so many dance performances in Oaxaca, and I really like this image made with a combination of flash and a long exposure, a long shutter speed. So I'm on a balcony in this particular venue looking down on the dancers, which is great because it takes away the busyness of the crowds watching. Again, same thing. This Hindu temple is dedicated to Shiva, one of the primary deities of Hinduism. Here I'm waiting, kneeling on the floor for 30 minutes in front of the doorway, waiting to see who's going to come out. And I kind of really like these two women. I have a lot of pictures from this particular vantage point. I traveled to Bhutan and Nepal, and I think I did discuss this before, but I figured it was good to talk about it again. It's a small, mostly Buddhist country just between China and India. The country has no traffic lights. Years ago, gross national happiness was identified by the nation as being more important than the gross national product. For this shot, I walked around the upstairs of the monastery where the monks live, knocking on doors, hoping to get in. And this guy did let me in. He was really nice. Smoking as well as tobacco products are illegal, as are hunting and fishing, except for catch and release. It is forbidden to climb high peaks where spirits dwell, and employees must wear traditional clothing. This was our guide, and he dressed this way every day. The monks are so real. I mean, they're not what you would expect. They hang out, they, play cards, they board games, and they just like being with each other, joking around. Here's a mother and child in Bhutan in Paro, right outside the temple. This one was taken on the streets of Paro in Bhutan, a mother and daughter. Ask any resident and they'll tell you how much they love their king and queen. One sticking point is that in Bhutan, they require you to pay an additional minimum amount of about $250 a day, which they charge the tour operators. So they add that onto your bill. A couple of sadhus in a temple in Nepal. And this was taken in Kathmandu. Here they are at the temple. This is what it looked like from the outside. Also in Nepal, I squeezed myself into this tiny little temple with this monk, and he kindly worked with me, and it turned out to be one of my favorite photographs from the trip. And walking the back streets of Paro and going into a coffee shop, noodle shop too. These kids are very cute. And here's another fella in that coffee shop. In Nepal, which is primarily a Hindu country, even though it was the birthplace of Buddha, it's not uncommon to see men and women with a small dot on their foreheads between their eyebrows. The mark is known as a bindi, and it's a Hindu tradition that dates to the 3rd and 4th centuries. It's traditionally worn by women for religious purposes or to indicate that they're married. At the festival, the people were selling the bindi powder. And I find that it's also great to photograph small details and still lifes when you're out traveling around. It adds a lot more depth to your trip. The city of Kolkata is one of the most vibrant, exciting, and diverse cities. I found myself there just before the pandemic broke out, February 8th, 2020. While walking around the Kolkata flower market, I came across this family at their stall, selling in their booth, and I did a bunch of photos of them. This beautiful woman was just walking the streets, and I was able to grab the shot with a long lens, blurring out the background. Another, right before her, I photographed this young bride. She had just gotten married and was ecstatic. I thought it was really interesting, all the things that she did to her face and everything for her bridal ceremony. And again, at the flower market, men were carrying these huge things everywhere. In this particular shot, I eliminated the background in Photoshop and just made it black, which I don't do that often, but I think this merited it. It was a very busy background. It's great to walk around markets and look for small moments, as well as the overall long shot that captures the atmosphere. Again, these were taken on February 8th, 2020. And I'm sure it's very sad that I can't imagine what happened to that flower market. It certainly isn't existing this way anymore. Here's another very fortunate chance meeting. I walked into the desert and saw these two guys in Morocco. I was at the foot of the desert. We were staying right there. And they were so handsome. I couldn't believe it. And I asked if they would work with me and do a series of photographs. They thought I was hilarious, that I took so many pictures of them, and I was making them walk and move and change and everything. And I wanted to give them money in the end, but they took out their satchels and brought out their ceramics that they had made. And I ended up buying two little beautiful camel figures from them. You know, we were both very, very happy. Almost everyone in Morocco refuses to be photographed. And these guys were Berbers who have a completely different philosophy than most Moroccans. But the other people, they put their hands in front of their faces, they throw things at you, they just yell at you, they won't let you do it. So I was lucky that I ran into them. Now, this is a young monk in Bhutan, and if we have some time left, I'd like to just show you some infrared. I've always been interested in infrared. Even when I was working in Manhattan in the 80s and 90s, I wanted to do it. I thought it was, you know, so artistic and different, but it required the film to be loaded in total darkness, and it had to be a certain temperature, and that was just too much. So just a few facts. Infrared photography is a look into the invisible world. Infrared waves are just below visible red light, and infra means below. Because every object gives off IR waves, we can use them to see in the dark. The most striking difference is the wood effect, an effect where leaves reflect light, giving them a bright white look. And this effect was named after the photographer Robert Wood, who was considered the father of infrared photography. The effect is utilized for landscape photography, where it produces surreal color landscapes or high contrast black and white photographs. But I also love it for portraits. Here you see an image that always draws people into my booth at art festivals and illustrates perfectly the effect I was just talking about. The leaves are like a lighter gray, whitish, and the sky becomes darker and more dramatic. The contrast really emphasizes the goats. But what's actually happening here? Well, the goats love the fruit of the argan tree in Morocco. They climb the trees and eat the fruit. Swallowing an almond-sized core whole. The nut passes through the goat's digestive system and ends up as goat droppings, where it is collected on the ground at the base of the tree. What I saw at the women's collectives were those nuts being ground, cracked open and being ground with a stone. And the seeds are ground up and the oil just drips from them. It's a very long process. They probably have machines that do it as well. But I saw the women doing it by hand. And this produces the famous liquid gold that is called argan oil that a lot of us use on our hair and skin. So here you can see the effect of infrared on a portrait. This is again the Turkana tribe in Kenya, and I love what the infrared adds to the portrait. The glow from the sunset and the golden look of the overall photo. Also, the traditional feel of the picture. It also gives a vintage or antique feeling. I love using it for the African tribes. The wavelengths penetrate into the skin and give it a milky look. Shadows pop out and the skies get darker. It makes the clouds appear very dramatic. It just takes you out of the literal world. When I look in the back of the camera or when I'm shooting and I see something in infrared, I'm like, oh, you know, I'm just like always loving it. The way it works is you remove the filter that blocks infrared in the camera and add a filter that only allows it. And that's the way companies like LifePixel convert a camera to IR, which I've done to a couple of my cameras. So I think that it really creates mystery and a mood. If you do go to, it's lifepixel.com, just so you know. And the website will give you many options for conversion. And here just quickly is a chart showing you the variety of conversions that you can get. Some people prefer the color enhancing IR filters, which will give you bright pink or blue images and deep skies. My personal preference is more the standard conversion because I like the authenticity of it and the way it gives a monochromatic quality to the scene. And this is classic IR. Most of the people I was traveling with were watching a goat slaughter when I took this picture. I definitely didn't want to do that. So I asked this guy to go for a walk with me and we wandered away and came upon this scene. This photo has a tranquil presence that I love. Also the way the cloud formations and landscape are accentuating the figure. And the IR makes his skull cap kind of have a silky look. Same with, oh, wait a minute. Same with this fellow. He looks like a prince or something in an old movie. I don't know, but I really love what how golden, you know, it makes his robe look. This picture I really love because these women were singing and dancing for us. And this was in the Omo Valley in Ethiopia. And I think the IR perfectly complements the old world style of the clothing. When you're shooting mirrorless, you can see the infrared effect in the viewfinder. And of course, you can, you know, change the exposure and you see that as well. You absolutely see it darkening light. I mean, it's great that way. It's also perfect for shooting a silhouette because you can control how dark you want the image to be. This is an acacia tree that's all over Africa. And sometimes, yeah, with this, even with my IR, I can get a pink kind of a look. I really think this came out nice the way it is. Here, this is a houseboat in Alleppey, India, southern India. And here I toned it. I added some color using a program called Nik. I'm sure some of you know it. It's an application that you can put into Photoshop and just click on it and it comes up. Really good for toning IR, as here. This was shot in, again, Alleppey, in the Kerala backwaters. It's a network of lagoons and lakes, as well as interconnected canals and rivers. And I was just kind of cruising down here in a gondola with a very small IR camera. I was able to get these pictures, which I have to say, this grouping I've sold so many times. And, you know, it was a teeny tiny little camera, so you never know. But I did tone it with the Nik program. Just to show you, you know, I have some really interesting shots of wildlife too with IR. Of course, the dark sky with the white birds. It's just really cool. This is one of my favorite images from my Palouse trip. And this is a schoolhouse held up by a truck axle. And it's a great juxtaposition of the cloud and the building. And I call this image the Crooked House. So one last thing, and we're almost done. I love this technique, and you probably all sort of know it, but I'll go over it quickly. To do this, you put the camera on a tripod and lower the ISO to about 50 or 100, whatever. And then you close the lens down to about 22. And you do a long exposure. In this case, it's 2.5 seconds. ISO 100. And you get a lot of movement. You can get very smooth water this way. I have a lot of pictures from Iceland where I use this technique. This jetty is in Fire Island, where I live during the summer. And it's one of my favorite subjects. This picture was actually handheld at dawn, but I was using a 16 to 35 millimeter Sony at 5.6. There wasn't a lot of light at a 1/10 of a second. And you get really, you know, very cool water movement using that. Same here. I would go back there a lot, you know, day after day and try and get different things. And, you know, you just keep going and you'd be surprised. You just keep shooting the same thing over and over again. So what I can say is never settle for one time good photo. Just keep going and to the same spot and you'll just get more and more. So, I mean, I could go on, but I will end here. Is anybody still there? I don't hear a thing.
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, good.
We're here. Beautiful.
Thank you. Let's see if I can get back to your screen. Oh, stop share. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Hello. So was that too long?
No, actually not.
Okay, good. All right, good.
So are you
any questions?
are you planning any new trips? No?
Yeah, I'm actually going to the it's an area between, it's like a bayou area between East Texas and New Orleans. We photographed the cypress trees on a lake, and I'm doing that in November. And then I have a trip planned to Cuba in December. We'll see if it actually happens because they haven't really said that it's okay to go there yet. I'm not sure. And then in May, I'm supposed to go to the Pyrenees. That trip was canceled twice. Last 2 Mays, it's been canceled. So we'll see.
Nancy, I have some questions about how you get people to pose for you. Do you ask them all the time, or do you just shoot them and then ask questions later? Or, you know, are you paying them money? I guess you're probably doing all those things, but a combination, and I'm sure you kind of get a feel for what you need to do at the time. But if you could comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helped that I was a people and a fashion photographer in advertising for so many years, and I photographed people my whole life. But to answer your question, I usually ask them, and because I want to take more than one photo, and I usually want them to look a certain, you know, like look toward the light or move them in a specific direction. I do give them direction. I don't just grab the shot. And as far as paying them, most people I don't pay. The only place that we had to pay was in the Omo in Ethiopia. A lot of those tribes, you know, they don't do it this way anymore because it became too rough. I mean, they would just swarm you because they knew that they were going to get some money, and it was very small amounts. It was like the equivalent of probably $2 or something, because we were given Ethiopian money. But now they don't do it that way anymore. Like when I went to the Mara, or I went, you know, to photograph the Maasai or the Samburu or the Turkana, all those tribes I did not pay, only the Ethiopia. And a lot of times the people that take us there will give contributions to the tribes, or sometimes we'll give them pens. They all want pens. I don't know why, but, and yeah, like that. But most of the pictures I am, you know, asking the people ahead of time, and then usually taking, you know, between 5 and at least 10 photos of each one.
And how about the language issue? Obviously, we're using sign language.
Yeah,
and
yeah, I
like
use
that.
a lot of sign language. You know, look this way, or a lot of times I'll say, close your mouth, or don't smile. You know, I don't want them to smile. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we have, when I went to do the Turkana, I had an assistant with me that spoke some of the tribal languages, but there's so many tribal languages that even he didn't know half the languages. So he was able to talk to them a little bit, but it's mainly sign language, really. That's pretty much, that's how it's done. But you have to break yourself in, you know, I mean, like I said, you have to sort of feel comfortable doing it. But you have to realize most people are flattered and they want to be photographed, except in Morocco. Yeah.
You get amazing results. There's some beautiful images.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Very good. Any more questions about the equipment or any other tips that you guys would like to?
Yeah, I have a question. The women's skin is so beautiful and flawless. Do you do a lot of Photoshop, or are they just naturally that way?
No, naturally. No, I don't retouch their skin. I mean, maybe trying to remember, but no, it's they are pretty flawless, actually. Yeah. No, I don't do a lot of retouching. The way I retouch is like I showed you, sometimes I'll use Nick. I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but or Topaz. But mainly it's adding contrast, especially in infrared. You usually need to add contrast because it can become you know, very sort of monochromatic and soft. So I do add contrast. Maybe a little saturation. That's about it. Not a lot of and I don't crop a lot either.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
What type of medium do you sell more? I'm actually trying to understand what people are asking more for when they buy your work. Is it more canvas or metal or regular paper, or is it? Do you have anybody asking you for digital media, or it's
Well, I
only?
wouldn't sell that because then they could reproduce it themselves. So no, I wouldn't do digital, but when I do the art shows, I print on 17 by 22 paper, on 13 by 19 paper, and I usually shoot 2 to 3. So the largest that'll fit on those papers, like 21 by 14 or 17 or 18 by 12. And then those are paper prints. And I put them in plastic and I put them in a bin. So I sell that. But then a lot of people want metal. They want really big pictures. So I'm selling a lot of 60 by 40, 24 by 36. Just recently, in the last few weeks, I sold the giraffes drinking in that blue water, the one I showed you, 40 by 60. And I sold the goats and I didn't show it here, but these Moroccan steps that I sell over and over again, 24 by 36. It just depends, another popular size for me is 32 by 48. I sell a lot of pictures that size as well, but sometimes canvas also. Some people want canvas instead of metal. But the best place I found to sell pictures is at the art fairs. And, I haven't been going because they weren't happening last year. So, but I put pictures on Facebook. Sometimes I sell it that way. People see something on Facebook or Instagram. You should all follow me on Instagram. Did you catch it?
Nancy, hi, it's Kurt. How are you?
Hey, Kurt. Hi. Where's your picture? Where's your
Oh,
person?
I didn't want to torture everybody.
Oh, come on.
First of all, just words can't describe your work. Spectacular, really, really amazing.
Yeah.
The question I have is, do you have to, the shots, the images of the tribes?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to earn their trust? Are you staying with them for several days so that they get used to you? Because there's no when you look at the images, there's no tension, there's no awkwardness, it's very natural. So are there trust factors that you have to, as a hurdle that you have to get over, and how do you do that?
Well, some of them I did go back to day after day. I definitely did not stay with them. I stayed in tents near them, but I just think that you joke around with them a little, even though they don't speak the language. I can't describe it, but you just have to just make them feel comfortable is what I would say. I didn't spend a lot of time with them for sure. I have to say that, but I think it's more, maybe it's because I'm a woman or the vibe or whatever, but I was able to get some really nice pictures of them. Have you done that? Have you gone to the tribes at all?
No, I have not, but watching your presentation, it's now been put on the bucket list.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Have you gone on safari?
No, that's actually my wife and I are talking about safari now. And
yeah.
But I have to figure it out because just looking at your images, there's so many places I would want to go.
Yeah. And so many more.
So,
I mean, I really had to cut it down because I originally had 4 lectures because I just did it for Rancho La Puerta over a 4-day period. of 45 minutes each. So I had like 400 pictures at minimum. And to make this, I didn't know what to, what to do, but I figured showing the portraits was good. I eliminated most of the landscape and animal portraits too. So just put a little bit in, but hard to cut it down. I'm going to be doing a talk for B&H.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to, they just contacted me. I don't know if you get their emails, but they do a lot of presentations.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do it in August. You'll see it when I haven't actually sent them my biography yet, but I spoke to them the other day, so I'm definitely doing it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Nancy, what do you do for you said that you don't touch the water because you don't know where that water is coming from, but I mean, when you are in those places, what do you eat? What do you drink? Where?
Oh, you mean India? Yeah.
India, yes.
No, you can't, obviously, if a woman's giving you water from a pitcher on a street, but you can't eat any street food, period. You don't eat the food on the street. You can drink, they do this very elaborate ceremony with the chai tea, pouring it, but they,
I'm gonna make my heat up my.
Put the garbage in so that I don't get.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Dark already.
Someone has the. I don't know.
anyway, they do this very elaborate ceremony with the chai tea where the water is boiled and boiled and boiled, and you can drink that on the streets in India. But basically you go to restaurants that, or you eat in your hotel, if you are in a hotel. I've stayed in some really grungy places. I mean, I just went to northern India to this place called Nagaland. So remote, so ridiculously remote that it was 38 degrees, no heat, no hot water. You shower with buckets, you pour buckets, they bring buckets of warm water. But then when you're finished, you're standing there in the freezing cold, just insane. I did that for 2 weeks. It was really, really tough. But the food was in these freezing hotels that had no heat, but they said it was safe and we ate it, didn't get sick. I mean, I have gotten sick a couple of times, but nothing too terrible. So yeah, you just have to be super careful. That's all.
I guess.
Yeah.
Nancy, I have a question. What kind of lens do you gravitate to use more towards your photography?
I was using, it's hard to say, but I like that 70 to 200 because it gives you a lot of leeway, but I'm really, really loving the 16 to 35 millimeter lens from the Sony that I just got. That's a 2.8. I also bought an 85 recently. That's also, I think it's a 1.8. And those lenses are great for people because you can really blur out the background. And also the 16 to 35, you can really hand hold it and use longer exposures. It's longer shutter speeds. It's really, really good. So yeah, I mean, I need to, for this trip to the Bayou, I'm supposed to get like a really long lens, but I think shooting on a boat with a 400 millimeter lens, you can't use a tripod. I mean, I'm not that big or strong and it's going to be like, so could end up being really difficult. So I'm not sure, but I've rented that lens from Sony and it's humongous. It's a huge lens. It's really, really big. So does anyone here have a Sony camera?
No.
Oh, nobody uses mirrorless. Does anyone here ever shoot infrared?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are you using for that? Did you get a conversion for Life Pixel?
Yes, I did. On my Nikon 7100.
Uh-huh.
But I no longer basically shoot Nikon. I now shoot Olympus, so I'm into mirrorless there.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So did you get the standard infrared conversion?
I got the super, what is it? I got
Color.
the baseline so that I could, so that I would have the live pass so that I could use the camera as a normal camera. And
Oh,
then I also bought, I forget which filter it is that I can do color and another one for black and white.
oh, okay. So it's not like a full conversion camera.
No,
Got it, got it, got it, got it. Yeah. Mhm,
it's
Hey,
fun.
Nance?
It's fun.
Oh, sorry.
mhm.
Nance, I'm curious. You were a Nikon shooter for many years,
My
and when
whole
you went mirrorless, when I went mirrorless, I went when Nikon came out with their Z generation, so I shoot with the Z7. But I'm curious why you went with Sony, even though I know Sony makes the sensors for Nikon. What made you decide to switch over to Sony?
Yeah, I wanted a lighter camera. I thought it was lighter and smaller, and being pretty much a small person, I decided that I'm always looking to lighten my load. And I figured, you know, especially as I'm getting older and everything, I wanted something as lightweight as possible. And I'm having Nikons. I know I mean, my last Nikon was a 750. Which, you know, I sold that whole thing. And that was, you know, it was a pretty heavy camera. So I had the D2X, that was a load. You know, I had the Nikon Fs when I was shooting, you know, F100s I was using with the motor drives. That's what I did most of my commercial work with, was Nikon Fs and the Hasselblad with film. And I just figured I just want to lighten up. I just wanted, and also Sony was, they had a better reputation then. You know, now I guess, has Nikon caught up? I mean, are they supposed to be as good? Because Sony was like the, you know, known as to be, you know, this gold standard of mirrorless. So that's another reason I chose it. I'm glad I did. I mean, it's very complicated. The camera's super, super complicated, but you know, eventually you learn it like everything else.
Yeah. No, I myself, like you, Nancy, I'm very small hands.
Mhm.
And that's why I couldn't take it anymore. So I went to Olympus, and I'm not sorry I did.
Yeah, they have these great rigs that I forget the company now. You put them around your shoulders and the cameras hang from both sides.
Mhm.
It's really cool, you know, and it's like when you're walking around, it's not like concentrated on your body. It feels less heavy. It's a good way to, if you're traveling, it's really good.
I have the Sony cameras. I've had a Sony since the Nex6, but I see that a number of professional photographers are moving to the Canon R mirrorless camera. They've talked about it. I haven't tried that because I still love my Sonys, but I have the smaller sensor was the A64.
Yeah, I needed the bigger sensor. I have the A7R3. It'll make 48 megapixels a picture if you let it. It's huge. And then there's an even bigger one. The reason I didn't get that is it's just too big. I mean, it's like 84 megapixels every time you take a picture. I mean, it's so I think for blowing up, you know, you can still do 60 by 40 with you know, the A7R3s. But you have to be careful because if the lighting is low, you'll get grain, you know, you'll get a lot of grain. So you have to really make sure the image is very sharp and well lit before you blow it up that big.
Thank you for your presentation. Beautiful pictures.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm glad you hung out till the end.
Thank you, Walter and Kendall Camera Club. Appreciate your inviting us.
Yeah, I hope to see you again on the 29th, but we have another speaker. Okay.
And you'll be receiving an invitation from us for this Monday evening.
Okay.
And who are you with? I missed it.
There are several guests here from Boynton Beach Camera Club.
Oh, Boynton Beach, great.
Yep, so we have become kind of like sister clubs since the start of the pandemic.
I think I did a presentation up there. I forget the lady's name. Well, maybe it was a specific community I did it for. But then it was live. I was living in, I was living in Miami and I brought all my stuff up there. I don't remember her name now, but yeah, I did do it in Boynton Beach. Cool. Interesting.
Very good. Well, thank you all for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thanks for coming.
Walter, I sent you an email. I missed the presentation because I teach on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. I just got through. That's why I joined in, but I missed the whole thing. I see you're recording it. Will I be able to see the recording?
Yeah, the recording will hopefully be done by Sunday and we post it to our website. So if you go to the candlecamera.club.org and you scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, all the recordings are there. And I'm hoping to be able to.
Excellent, Walter.
I'm hoping to be able to edit this one and post it by Sunday, hopefully.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Nancy, I'm curious. You said that you were planning to go to the Pyrenees.
Yes.
Which part in the Pyrenees are you going?
Well, I'm going with this group called the Munch Workshop, I think it's called.
Yes.
And they do the Pyrenees and the Carmack, which is really what I was really interested in doing because that's where they have all these horses running on the beach. And then I don't know exactly what area of the Pyrenees. I mean, I had this all booked way before, right before the pandemic, and I was flying to Barcelona, and I was supposed to be May of 2020. So it was, and I paid for the whole thing, by the way. They're sitting with my money. So it was paid for May, then 2021 canceled again. So I'm hoping, 2020, I'm pretty sure they say they're going to go. So yeah, I'm hoping we'll go.
Is that in Catalonia or is that in the Spanish side or is French
Yeah.
side?
Yeah, I think it's the Pyrenees Spanish side, and then we go to the French side for the Carmack.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of driving, actually.
Yes, it is.
If you're going to Barcelona, you're gonna be driving all the way to the other side of the Pyrenees on the Atlantic coast, and then you will have to go and cross the front to France, which is.
Yeah, I don't know if we're taking a flight or not. I haven't looked at the itinerary in so long now because it's it's supposed to go 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So I hope we're taking a flight somewhere. That sounds like a lot of driving.
Yeah, it looks like
it's a long distance.
Yeah. I mean, it's like driving from, Marrakesh to Fez and then all the way to Chefchaouen. That was like driving through Morocco. That was so much driving. It was crazy.
Yeah, just think that from Barcelona to probably Toulouse in France, that probably is about 6 or 8 hours.
Yeah, then we're probably driving. That's not as bad as I thought. I thought you were going to say.
But it's mountain going up and then going down.
Yeah, well, we're probably doing it over a 2 or 3 day period because the whole trip is 2 weeks. So, I'm sure we have time and we're stopping along the way and taking pictures and all that. Have you done the Pyrenees? Did you go?
Yeah, I've been there a lot. Yeah, I camped over there in my youth. and I live there too, so in that area. So yeah, I love it.
Amazing. Good. It's very photogenic, yeah?
Oh yeah, it's beautiful, especially if you go to the size of Girona. You're gonna find places with canyons and cascades and waterfalls that are hidden in the mountains, and they're beautiful places over there. Very green, very beautiful. It doesn't look nothing like you might imagine that Spain is,
Actually, they mentioned we are going to be shooting waterfalls. So yeah, definitely wherever you're right.
Right. In Girona, they have about 40 to 60 small volcanoes, and which you might find very interesting. They're not that big, but
inactive.
Sorry.
They're not active, right?
No, they're not. They've been quiet for centuries. So
Good. Okay, good. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I hope it happens.
it's a beautiful place to go.
I mean, I was said also to go, and it's not going to happen. We're not doing it, but to Myanmar, and that's like a political nightmare now. So,
Yes,
Right.
oh, yes.
so that whole trip is gone, and might go to Vietnam maybe instead. I mean, we have to see, but yeah, that was a pity. So, hopefully it'll start up again.
Yeah.
I'm hoping. I mean, everybody now, it's like if you're vaccinated, you could go anywhere. You don't have to wear a mask anymore. So it's kind of cool.
Except for Canada, they make you.
I heard that. That's so horrible. I know.
Yeah.
Oh my
They
God.
make you 2 weeks. I mean, wow, that's a long time.
No, it's unheard of. Really crazy. Luckily, we never had.